Hello everyone, hopefully my voice is loud and audible. It's late at night, so I can't speak too loud. If by any chance the music is louder than my voice, please let me know in the chat section. I wanted to speak about a very interesting idea. We human beings, even though we are creatures in a state of awareness and conscious activity, we have doubts about the depth and the roots of reality. What that means is when a person looks at a tree, they see the tree, they may even see the fruit that tree provides, right? But they do not see its roots. And if the tree has roots, it means there is dimensions to the world or to the living human experience that are rooted in soil that the eyes cannot see. What that means is anytime human beings begin fathoming or wondering about simulation theory, come to a state where we are questioning the majesty of our own intelligence, if I can say that. I would say that the question, do simulations live through us, and do simulations live through us, or are we living through simulations? This question is challenging whatever social construct the person is, whatever individualism the person is, and is suggesting in some sense that fiction is living in non-fiction, or non-fiction is living through fiction. That means we are not only in a world where there is truth, we are in a world where the truth and the false walk side by side. They are in some sense the twins of the same moment. That means it's as if like a coin being heads and tails simultaneously. In the subtitle, I have written World Questions. And really, we will not fathom or wonder about a simulation until we're wondering about the individual's relationship with the environment, with the world, you know. Something magnificent. It's just this recognition that we are somewhere. You know, all our questions of philosophy and what science is aiming to see, but in some sense has limited itself to see. This world could be a mind phenomenon rather than a body phenomenon. And this is so crucial to notice. This is one of those wake-up calls for our species, that we were under the impression the world could be seen. But we are part of the world seeing, and to be able to see the seer is in some sense another way of saying not to have faith in the invisible. But when you see that the invisible is as real as the visible, and when I say invisible, I'm not talking about abstract formations. That means in man's imagination, let's say a young child saw a cartoon about dragons, and the young child is walking and looks at the sky, and suddenly in that child's inner realms, he perceives a shadow of a giant dragon following it, from the sky. Or let's say a child sees a film about a dragon, and then an airplane is flying above the child, and the child doesn't know what an airplane is. So the shadow of the airplane will suddenly simulate to the child the mimicking of like a dragon flying by. There's something so fascinating about how we are being something. And the way we have designed the world, the way we have created a meaningful society, is in some sense through the rejection of arbitrary forces that are so obviously there, right? I'll give you an example. Right now in 2021, just to give a historic reference, we have experienced the Black Plague of our time. The Black Plague was a disease, you can say, during Renaissance times back in the day. And the Black Plague, in some sense, took away many lives. Now there were doctors, I forget their names, those doctors with the white masks, where inside the mask they would put herbs and whatever. There were these masks. Oh God, what is the term? It's like a Venetian doctor mask. Anybody search this online, they will find it. It's like a mask that looks like a bird. Doctors would wear this to protect themselves from the plague, right, from disease. And people back in the day, they didn't have a proper understanding of disease. To them, it was equivalent to black magic. What that means is human beings were born into a world, but they actually didn't know what birth was, and they didn't know what death is. You could say a majority, a giant percentage of how life has gone forth has not been with knowledge. Knowledge is the luxury of the sophistication of our minds now. Back in the day, the knowledge was experiential, meaning it was connected to the natural system. I would say we human beings right now, in 2020, are actually experiencing a world that is separate from our nature. To experience a world in nature is so intense. That means those people who go to Samadhi, it's for me sometimes, I've had discussions with people where they are in some sense trying to show me how enlightened they are. But the issue with enlightenment is that if you were enlightened, you wouldn't think about it. And what does that mean? That means that if you were right now a professional skateboarder, you wouldn't think about wanting to find a skateboard and to ride the skateboard, because you had seen that reality, you had lived through that reality, and the next has opened up to you. You know? To speak about a simulation means to speak about emptiness's mask. Right now, I would say I am simulating this conversation in emptiness. I would tell you that people may think I'm just sitting here giving a talk, but what is actually happening is that prior to me sitting here, just any time I come to give these talks, I have realized that knowledge is everywhere. So knowledge is not something we can actually go find, even though we need explorers in this world, but it's not something we can find. It's something that we are. And when a person is being a sort of intelligence, that intelligence is like the space of their animation. So when I give these talks, I come and sit down, and in a state of stillness, I watch my moment. As I watch my moment, my mind starts to slowly dance. My inner realms start to animate. When my inner realms start to animate, they attain momentum. When they attain momentum, it's as if in these talks, my mind is running faster than my body. my mind is moving way faster than my body. What that means is the mind is experiencing an unconditional film of image, but the body is experiencing a conditional film of image. What that means is if suddenly the atmosphere was gone, we human beings would not be able to breathe, you know? And the great clue, this is one of my, I would say, uncommon theories on reality, that I feel the atmosphere is a being. It's a living being that has encapsulated a rock. We say that the atmosphere is made from plant life. The plant life on this planet, in some sense, creates enough oxygen for us to be able to breathe and live in this world. And so it's as if the plant kingdom has managed a way of holding itself, you can say poetically, as oxygen consciousness. And so the interconnectivity of life not only breaks simulations, but in some sense brings forth reality. I want to read some quotes about simulations for the audience. This quote is from Stephen LaBerge. He says, "Our brain simulates reality, so our everyday experiences are a form of dreaming, which is to say they are mental modes, simulations, not the things they appear to be." This is why I say your inner realm is overlaid on your outer realms. If you use your free will, your mind is moving first, then your body. If you don't use free will, your body is being moved by the world before your mind moves. People listening right now to these Mr.Within episodes, most likely my voice is moving your inner realms. But if I say something and the listener gets fascinated, then something internally happens that causes the listener to pursue the idea beyond I have spoken. That means your inner realms have activated. Your inner realms are moving faster than mine, you know? My family, I have a twin brother and my parents, and I will tell you that something I have observed in human nature since childhood is that everybody needs a level of existence to themselves which they have to simulate, and a level of existence with the world which they can't simulate, but in their participation they align to the simulations of the outer realms. You know, some people on this planet, I would say they are emotionally gifted. What that means, emotionally gifted, is that they don't need systematic meaning to understand. Their understanding is instantaneous. This is why, for me, the salvation of the morality of the human species is in the hands of women on this planet. You see? Even though when we look at our history, there has been the feminist movement and whatnot, but what is very fascinating is that men have arose from women, you know? And the suggestion of this means that, you know, it's like a poem from this very profound Persian mystic known as Sadi. And of course this person, I mean, I wasn't there back in the day, but I'm saying this person is a poet, and he is known for this very unique poetic passage, which I'm going to explain for you. The poet Sadi says something. He says he finds himself in a moment where his mother is very disappointed in him. You know, this poet Sadi from like 700 years ago or something like that. Less than 700 years ago, but something around that time. And Sadi, he says to his mother, "Mother, forgive me, because all my sins have come from you, and the meaning of the universe is like a yarn of wool. where from it has no beginning or end. It just is a systematic being, right? He doesn't say that, the systematic being, but he says it's like life is like a yarn, like a ball of wool, no beginning, no end. Its beginning and end is in itself. So, in that sense, Sadi was saying that in some sense his existence emerged, and so I would call these emergent permissions. That means it's like all the people alive now. Your parents activated your consciousness in this existence, and we as human beings, our task in the continuity of the survival of the species is to go forth and activate consciousness into reality. I would say that when it comes to emotions, I have been less in control than when it comes to subjects. Ideas, they are like films that simultaneously happen in whatever elemental room you're in. But when it comes to emotions, emotions are like, it's as if you're a cat in a box and the emotion grabs you by the back of the neck and pulls you out of the box, right? So emotions are the intensification of reality, either through the inner realms or outer realms. In meditation, the person would go sit and be still, and then their mind would perform in front of them. When their mind would perform, and a meditator would have an ability to watch the events of their mind. What that means is like the mind is like Cirque du Soleil, but it's happening over reality, the physical stage. So we have a non-physical life and a physical life, and to our non-physical life, our objective reality seems like a simulation. To our physical life, subjective reality feels like a simulation. And so, sorry guys, just quick phone call. Hold on. The mind, you can be detached to it. Jesus Christ. You know what it is? Simulations of meaning are imposed probabilities of how the past's information has accumulated. What that means is we are not people. We are a biological camera. And this biological camera goes on recording all the scenery, everything that is in the environment, and that footage, that B-roll, that additional vision, it coagulates to become our expression. So you know how the body needs food and water to be able to animate. The mind or our personalities need imagery, need sensory content to animate. So what it seems to be happening is that an invisible field of intelligence is consuming sensory perception to be embodied to itself in the void. if sorry guys, this was on mute and I was talking. um, so what I was saying was that I had a conversation with someone about emptiness meditation and concentration meditation as being two types of meditation. Now, what I didn't mention was that if you do concentration meditation, if you attain single pointedness of mind on any phenomena, you will eventually come to emptiness meditation. What does this mean? This means any human being on this planet that zooms in, which is emptiness, which is concentration meditation, and zooms out, which is emptiness meditation. If you zoom in, you will eventually come to zooming out. That means the question comes: what do we do after we have explored the microcosm? We go to the macrocosm. And then what do we do after we have explored the macrocosm? We go to the microcosm. So I think it is fair to say that we are a species on this earth that has an intelligence on this earth that is going from the micro to the macro, and most likely they are very advanced civilizations, extraterrestrial civilizations. This is a probability, but I'm saying that there is a macro intelligence trying to access the micro. And another poetic way of saying it is that your past life is trying to run towards your future life, and your future life is running towards your past life, and in the middle, you who are the consciousness of the present has realized why they are both running, why the future is endlessly destined to take care of the past, and the past is endlessly destined to take care of the future. And the reasoning behind it is that emptiness doesn't wear a watch. So time is a simulation. People are like, is the world a simulation? It's like, maybe not atoms, but I would tell you, time is 100% a simulation. All those people who are bound by time, you are in some sense worshipping the arbitrary. But the issue is that we need efficiency and effort as well. You know, some people who their work in this lifetime, I see it like this. First of all, I see there's like, we're getting close to 8 billion human beings on this planet. I see these 8 billion human beings, first of all of them as advanced antennas, to be honest. That means when I talk to people on some level, I'm like, okay, what a nice person. But on another level, I'm like, what kind of antenna of expression or a reception of expression is the person being, right? You know, there's something that is said to people often, that it's as if listen better, become a better listener. People love those people who listen well, you know. But the hilarious thing is, how you listen is filtered by the personality. So if the person doesn't care, do you know how much knowledge you miss out on? A lot of people who find opportunities that are rare, the only reason they're finding it is because they're not having a biased dualistic judgment on the moment. So as they live, they see the full landscape. As they see the full landscape, they have access to all its opportunities. You know, this is something that the religious mind can't have. This is something the secular mind can't have. Why? Because the atheist and the theist are each trying to grab onto the extremes of the meaning of a system. The atheist is like, get out of here with your imagination, you know? And the religious mentality is like, get out of here with your, you know, non-imagination, with your reality. Why? Because truth, something people don't say about it is that it needs to become experientially engaged. That means we are not looking for conceptual truth, because, excuse my language, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck about the subjective truth? You know, I'm giving talks here right now, you know, and I've looked at it and I'm like, no. It's not ideas that fascinate people. It is modalities of perception. It is views where they feel their intelligence can be activated. That is it. That is like the future of marketing, by the way. Ability. People are going to go towards what enables them, not what, you know, cages them subjectively. You know, I can tell you something hilarious. The human being is such a, we are like, human nature is so funny that we don't just cage animals like birds or pets, right? We cage ourselves in concepts. And we go on living our lives wondering why are we in a cage and who put the cage there, not realizing our attention is being the world, it's creating it. Imagine there's a person, you know, there's a person walking back in the day, like in the forest, and truth, not an alien, not an angel, truth, the ultimate truth, manifests suddenly to this, let's say, person walking in the forest. And then truth looks at this person and says, hey man, do you want to know the ultimate? And this person says no. And truth, let's say truth in that moment is like shocked. Truth is like, I came to see this person, but this person doesn't want to see me. And the person says, because I have seen you everywhere, that means you don't need to touch divinity the moment you realize intelligence is ever present. It is present everywhere. And it's honestly, what's funny is that our survival is dependent on who has the most energy to simulate reality. That means energy levels are dictating our social position in the hierarchy. A person who is tired, we know this by, it's like a fact, the person who's tired becomes agreeable. Why? Because the person who's tired wants the moment to quickly go into an unconscious state. There's been moments where I've been tired and I've had phone conversations, and in those conversations it's like the inner realms have become so silly that reality could be anything, you know? It's like there's no such thing as, believe it or not, man's brain changing. It's as if like it has never been the same. It's just logical, you know. Why? Because the brain is like a jar. Any person who's been on the subway, you know, like there was a time I had to go through 24 subway stations, you know, to get to downtown Toronto. And these subway stations, it's this, like, the subway is such a dangerous mode of transport. Why? Because your brain is inside a jar of liquid inside your skull, and when the person sits on the subway, all the chairs should be pointing towards the front of the subway, but the subway system hasn't realized this. Literally, it should be like a train. Train where all this, like a cinema theater, you know, like a movie theater where all the seats are pointing front. So the brain on the subway, it's like a jar of liquid that moves really fast and suddenly stops, moves really fast, suddenly stops. So what that means is, because our brain appears as a jar of liquid, jar of neurochemistry, kind of moving, we can say the liquid in that the brain is never in one state. So only an awareness beyond individualistic identity, which is the simulation of the brain, can be said to be an enlightened clarity. So in some sense, what people think is enlightenment is waking up from the dream of language. By the way, I don't know why viewers of this channel don't do this, but the chat section allows anyone to ask a question and allows the audience to let me know what to go deeper into, if it's an idea or a concept. Because really, when I speak, I'm a drone. I'm like a drone moving in my inner realms. I'm just like piloting between landscapes of realism that the mind has access to. I have experienced in my inner realms teleportation. I do it often. What I mean by teleportation is that there is a teleportation where the world, that you are teleported into a world, and there is a teleportation where the world is teleported into you. In these episodes, if I am successful in painting a sort of landscape for the audience would have an ability to teleport in their inner realms to that landscape, because the mind could be anything when sound and other sensory perception and stimulus affect. We can say nobody is becoming a god. We're just realizing God is us. And when God is us, that is the end of language. That means what happens when you find truth? There's nothing else to find. So you can say that if at least from the Vedic angle, they see that there is 7 higher worlds, upper worlds, and 7 lower worlds. And this even makes us wonder if Dante, from this Italian writer, was influenced by the Upanishads or not, by the Gita or not. By the Vedas. So in Dante's Inferno, we come across the story of a character whose wife is taken by duality, by the devil. And in some sense, this man, through the assistance of the spirit known as Virgil, if I remember correctly, has to go through the 7 levels of hell, and then after he goes to the 7 levels of hell, he goes to the 7 levels of heaven. That means for existential phenomena, the meaning of life is to experience it in as fully as possible in all its dimensions, right? And when we realize there's 7 lower worlds and 7 upper worlds, to a singular being, that is a journey of exploration. But to a collective being, a multidimensional being, the 7 dimensions, these are all parallel realities of selfhood that we activate into. So there's this view where we are one kind of self, and then there's this view that because the self comes from the world, we could be in any sense of self in any moment of the world. I have experienced moments on this planet of such selflessness that the world, the whole moment is the self, when you don't try to make a part of the moment only yourself. When the whole moment is the self, that is the finale of the soul. The soul has nothing to do because it is being everything. This is why we need to, this is why I think I was, even though I feel I was born 400 years too soon, and I feel at the same time there's a karmic credit the realm may owe me. Not people, just karma. The lords of karma may, I don't know, but it feels that way. And it feels like I have been, just all the human beings alive in 2020, we have been evoked. we have been positioned here to evolve the communication of the species. That means we reached a sort of paralysis in the outer realms. In the outer realms, like, you cannot have a deeper conversation with people more than how their body is being held true. But to discover that the body is a projection of mind means to discover that all simulations of knowing and knowledge are actually the unknown being here, right? So it's as if for the first time this very strange vibe is finding our species. And what is this vibe? It is the vibe of us not knowing what we are, but having lived as if we do. This is the beauty of this world and the mystery of mysticism. This is when you become a lover of the unknown, when you have loved what you have known, and then you're like, what else? Because I understood this. There was this quote from this writer. This is the best advice you can give to a writer. And this advice is that write the book that you can't wait to read. What it means is that content creation can become animated at such a fascinating level that the person's past instantly updates. I'll give you an example. For me, it's like this. I was a shy person, very shy person, and then I realized I'm a temporary elemental possibility for the generation of communication that comes across as a person. So when you realize you're temporary, you, excuse my language, you wake the fuck up from whatever life you've lived. There's something known as Aristotle designed a way for us to know the cause of something from 4 ways. Aristotle is a very important figure in history. And in order to know the causal essence of a phenomena, there's 4 ways to interpret it. So I'm going to just add the picture here if people can look at the wallpaper for a moment. There we go. So this picture is very important for people to know. This picture, oh my god. This is Aristotle's 4 causes, and we have to right now, in order to honor the metaphysical exploration of our realm, I will in some sense try to apply Aristotle's 4 causes on life, on the world, on the modern man. So the modern man, if Aristotle, let's say you were walking, in the park, and you suddenly saw Aristotle is feeding pigeons, and you went up to Aristotle and you're like, yo, Aristotle, what is the cause of the world? Aristotle would be like, I thought you'd never ask. Aristotle would say, out of the 4 causes, first of all, we have the material cause. What does this mean? That means the meaning of something is its material constitution. That means if an alien asked the scientist, what is life? The scientist would say, an atomic evolutionary mystery. Right? Its material is defining its causal meaning. When we go to the formal cause, this is the shape. This is how I think through. I think like a designer usually. That means the geometry of the world is speaking to me more than its emotional turbulence. So the formal cause is how, Aristotle says, how is it arranged? That means how is the shape of something? So we can say the meaning of life has nothing to do with atoms. It has to do with the shape of the person. That means the meaning, the cause of life is its design. Then we go to the efficient cause. This is where all those people were like, what is the mission of my soul here? All those people in the New Age community, this is your answer. The efficient cause is what or who is it made for, and what or who made it, and what it means is this is a way of looking at the meaning of life as if it was a seed. That means it was destined. It has a destination. It is going somewhere where consciousness can access. Or maybe not consciousness, because beyond the body it would be awareness. So, for example, this podcast of mine, aside from it having a material cause, a formal cause, being made of words, the words creating a certain format, and then who or what is made for is who I'm speaking to, for example. So the efficient cause is like what set the thing in motion and for what. It is the destiny of the object being a reason for why it was caused in energy. Then we have the final, oh my god, I messed this up, guys. I messed this up. I was explaining to you the final cause. So I'll rewind like a film. I spoke about the material cause, formal cause, efficient cause, what or who made it. That means it has a source. I would say this efficient cause would be like, I am the efficient cause of this podcast. To religious people, God is the efficient cause. To secular people, the Big Bang Theory is the most, graspable theory for now. Where the Hubble telescope noticed background radiation, and this background radiation, in some sense, the temperature of the universe allowed us to theorize that its origin was inanimate, was just force. That means the secular person doesn't worship God, but worships the forces of nature that inevitably affect our perception. So the efficient cause is like somebody did it, The final cause is who is this made for? And so the final cause of humanity is the advanced civilization. It's our future. That means people may think I'm speaking to 2020, but I'm actually speaking to an audience that has not been born yet. So, if I was to think about the meaning of life only through its material constitution, there is no personality, there is no persona, Jungian persona. It's just stuff here, and stuff is being stuff. That's the end of the philosophy. If I choose to look at the design of the human being, I begin to notice that there are mysteries, there are unanswered modalities of life going forth. It's as if the divine is everywhere, but because we think we are only a small part of everywhere, we cannot access everywhere. That means because the mind is an object, we cannot declare it as an individual phenomenon. That means everybody who has said my mind, or that's that person's mind, this is a wrong statement. We are unsure of its true position. That means right now I could be an individual being talking to other individual beings within a collective field, or I could be a collective being individually communicating to my collective. That means gods are using human beings like phones. As a sort of poetic escalation of meaning. So, if I was to look at the material cause, it's a simulation of the brain. If I look at the formal cause, it's a simulation of the brain. If I look at the efficient cause, we don't know what simulated the brain. And if I look at the final cause of physical reality, it's as if we don't know what the brain was simulated here for. I feel any person can divide their life through this through this cubic lens that Aristotle has provided us, and you can wonder, you can pretty much, I think Aristotle found the best way to live, because your past is being considered, your future is being considered, and the present is being considered in regards to its materialism and form. So, dear listeners, we are intelligence that is present in 2 dimensions. The body is found in the here and now, in the present moment. The mind, which is the creator of time, which is the originator of time, is found in 3 dimensions. So your mind is a 3-dimensional phenomena. Your body, or excuse me, I'll say it like this. Your body is a singular phenomena. Your mind is a dualistic phenomena. The witness of your mind, which the ancients called the soul, is a 3-dimensional phenomenon. And it's this metaphor, I use it often, where the soul, this traditional geometry of body, mind, soul, it was a classification system. This classification system, you could see the soul being the general, the mind being the commander, and the body being the soldier. Now, the soldier is waiting for orders from the mind. Our physical body needs to be animated in accordance to our vision, right? So the mind has to give orders to the body, and anybody who has grabbed a glass from a cupboard and drank a cup of water, anybody who's drank a cup of water, your mind, like a commanding officer, has commanded your body. You know why life is a command? You know, this is why what I found very profound about religious texts. They said, if you look at from the religious angle, theological lens, at why the universe was made, or how God made man. That means many religious people know that there was a creator that made the creation, but they don't know how the creator made the creation. And in religious texts, in the Abrahamic traditions, it explains it. How the God made man was God commanded. God said be, and man became, man existed. So it was an instantaneous existence. So God is a metaphor for the unconscious mind. Now, God, if there was a command like exist and man suddenly existed, that command is a signal. A command is a wave. This is the biggest clue that religion is giving, that reality is a giant wave simulation. It's like we are a wave that has become aware it's a particle, because in science people don't know how to perceive light. You know, we can perceive light through a photonic lens where it's particle oriented, or we can understand life we can understand light through physics as waves. So it's either a wave hallucinating a particle, or it's a particle hallucinating a wave, you know. And so if we have multiple states of mind, and we have multiple dimensions to life, which the mind is one of those dimensions, that means life can't be singular. That means we are suffering from wanting a film to be a photograph, but it's not a photograph. And I will tell you, all those people who are using techniques of positivity, like, good job. I mean, that's good. To be a positive person in a hollow simulation is incredible. Like, great effort. But at the same time, honesty will melt, or will make the ignorance evaporate. I have found no other way. There is no other way access to truth than being true. And being true to yourself doesn't mean being ideologically possessed, where you think your truth has to be a certain idea. More and more as we walk in the space-time continuum, we begin to realize the possibility of attention creating anything. You know, in my inner realms, when I studied ancient mythology, those mythological archetypes animated. That means in my inner realms, in my imagination, I have talked to so many gods. You know, I have flown as even fields of as my own simulation of a world. What that means is your mind is a private server, your body is found in a public server. So we have access to a private simulation of reality inside a public simulation of reality. That private simulation in reality, as it moves in the public simulation, it updates. As it updates, the attributeless witness reclarifies its own self. So you can say all of life is so a field of intelligence can pinpoint itself through matter. Or as Swami Krishnananda, this man was so ahead of his time, he said this quote, which was incredible. He said he was a religious yogi, and he said that he said religion is God remembering himself. That means what the religious person doesn't understand, that if they truly were religious, they would not be themselves. Everything would be the divine will in motion. And when the divine will is in motion, there is no individualism. So this is why I feel attachment to any ideology will lead to turbulence. You pilot in this realm as if you are in the world but not of it. You know? As if you, there's a great thing they say, okay, so Christ said to be in the world but not of it, right? And we see this saying in the Diamond Sutra. In the Diamond Sutra, they said a Buddha walks in the forest without moving a single straw of grass. What that means is you live in this life not as if you have to be something specific, not as if you have to be this or that, but in the sense where you are like a wind. If you look at wind, it moves all the leaves on the tree, but it cannot be touched. The wind is the rare instance where the invisible touches the visible. And people, and militant atheists, they are so inconsiderate, not realizing before we knew what the wind was, it could have been interpreted as invisible interference, right? And then we're like, oh yeah, it's just the wind, but before, back in the day, imagine the wind blew a candle and the person would be like, oh my God, is there an entity in the room? Is there something else here other than us? Every moment is alive, but what that life force has an allegiance to is different. Simulation theory, it has certain explanations in today's time. An approach to simulation theory is that our technology becomes so advanced that it creates reality in a way where it's indistinguishable from natural reality. So unnatural reality could become way more complex than natural reality, to the degree that technology, we are all inside of technology right now, we don't realize it. That could be a view where video games became indistinguishable from reality, so we couldn't tell if we're inside a video game or if this is actually, an unknown nature. You know what I feel? I feel the future is like a giant is going to land on this planet, and we have to prepare as a species. And our greatest preparation would in some sense be an awareness of a field of mind and an ability to mobilize and utilize the lifetime for the most efficient outcome. That means it's not survival of the fittest, it is survival of the most efficient outcome. If 8 billion human beings started to live in the most advanced way that their eyes would allow them, they would not only update, they would in some sense update the world. So individual updates lead to collective updates. And life can be cruel. That's the biggest thing I've realized, that even though the person may feel slightly artificial at times, but the personality may feel artificial at times, but the person has to. You have to, as a human being, be ridiculously compassionate to the outer realms based on two reasons. One, if you're not compassionate, you don't simulate a compassionate effect. The second, what that means is your karma is going to be turbulent. The other reason is because people have to have a giant multidimensional tolerance for what will happen here. And what that means is we should have patience cultivation. You know, there should be this law in schools where if a student is late to class, that student has to sit quietly for 30 minutes at the corner of the room. And all those kids who don't like meditation, they will always be on time, you know. Because silence is where the mind settles. That means there are some people who, if you were to explain their thinking, it's like a pond where endless rocks are being thrown at it, and so very endless ripples are being generated. And there are some people who, every moment they're alive in, it is true, the stimulus engages the person. So rocks are thrown, but the person waits until the ripples complete, and then they live. They enter their next moment. So if one skill, the human species, the greatest skill I would say the human species can attain, cultivate before entering the void, I mean we all transition at some point in this world, is watchfulness. That means we are moving to the era of being watchers of our mind, no longer just the unconscious mind savagely animating as the instincts of a vicious animal. I'm going to continue the quote tunnel. Nicholas Negroponte says, learning by doing, peer-to-peer teaching and computer simulation are all part of the same equation. Okay, I think this website is, I need more ancient quotes, you know. Okay. By the way, guys, I think the website Brainy Quotes should get a medal. The creators of that website should get some sort of global medal. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. Ray Kurzweil says the Blue Brain Project expects to have a full human-scale simulation of the cerebral cortex by 2018. I think that's a little optimistic, actually, but I do make the case that by 2029 we will have very detailed models and simulations of all the different brain regions. That's incredible. Yeah, 2029, he's being even overly safe, you know. I would give it 5 years from now. Let's see what else there are. Okay, I'm just going to read from the Rig Veda, guys. This is easier. In the Rig Veda, it says, as the counterpart... Okay, there's no way. Okay, wait, these quotes, I don't know how accurate they are. Hold on, guys, hold on. The day we will have an internet search result that is just high quality information all the time, if every company in the planet begins trying to create the highest quality, the most efficient product imaginable or fathomable to them, the world will become such an incredible place. The aim is to increase the standard of living of 8 billion people on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and it has to come from a sensitivity to wanting a better quality of the experience, and that is the ultimate inspiration. You know, the unknown is the greatest muse. A person can achieve everything by being simple and humble. True that. In the Sam Veda, it says laziness erodes a person of his enthusiasm and energy. As a result, the person loses all opportunities and finally becomes dejected and frustrated. The worst thing is that he stops believing in himself. Yeah, this is why I was like, forget the whole teacher-student mentality. Everybody is like an advanced communicator. That if in this life they're smart, they will realize an individual expression that aligns to a collective vision is like win-win. You know. In the Rig Veda, it says, "Let the stronger man give to the man whose need is greater. Let him gaze upon the lengthening path of life. For riches roll like the wheels of a chariot, turning from one to another." In the Rig Veda, it says, when there is harmony between the mind, heart, and resolution, then nothing is impossible. And what that means is mind, heart, resolution. That means when you're content with your past, when you're content with your future, and you have attained this through contentment in the present, you will reach a state of mind where you will live a day on this planet where there is no past, future, and there is no here and now, present even. There is no symbology needed for the simple presence of an energetic moment of being. Those days are so filled with insight that I can tell you it's as if we haven't learned to use our minds well on this planet. In the Atharva Veda, it says, "Do not be led by others. Awaken your own mind, amass your own experience, and decide for yourself your own path." This is why I'm saying the best thing that the outer guru archetype can be is a mirror. In the Rig Veda, it says one who has performed karma for the benefit of humanity with an unbiased approach, because bias gives birth to evil, which creates thousands of obstacles in our path. Okay, anyways, I'll read it as it is. It says, one should perform karma for the benefit of humanity with an unbiased approach, because bias gives birth to evil, which creates thousands of obstacles in our path. Yeah, you know what bias means? Bias means that the surfer is not riding the main wave of their true nature. So it's as if they're piloting through an idea that they have not looked at well. That is where not only life is a simulation, if a person is dishonest, the meaning of life becomes a simulation. Then you descend into the levels of animal. When you descend to the levels of animal, that means the person's ego there's a greater than sign for the ego. Then cruelty. So what that means is, and there are some human beings on this planet, I will say, that in their inner realms they are living like warlords, like cruel, very cruel. But that inner realm landscape can be shaped when the person attains a new experience of a pleasant possibility. In the Rig Veda, it says the person who is always involved in good deeds experiences incessant divine happiness. It's like, yeah, because your cause is advancement. So if you live in an advanced way, you also get to see advanced karma. And advanced karma is not just divine conversation with the logos. It is, in some sense, a recognition that your individualism is not the source of the problem. The field identifying with the particle is the source of the problem. The field forgetting that it is a field. Right now, any conscious being listening to me, you're not the body. Why? Because your body is a part of your whole moment. It's not all of it. That means the candle wax is not the candle flame. Consciousness is the candle flame. The candle flame, as the poet Rumi says, once placed in the sunlight, it's the light of the candle and the sunlight are the same. So the mind is the universe. It cannot die, it cannot be hurt, it cannot fail. It is in some sense eternal victory by nature. In the Yajur Veda, it says, truth cannot be suppressed and always is the ultimate victor. In the Rig Veda, it says one should respect his motherland, his culture, and his mother tongue because they are givers of happiness. And the best way to respect, to be a patriot, is to be a global, universal being. That is the best form of patriotism, wherever you are alive, you hold it in a higher light because it deserves to advance. Everything deserves to advance, I look at animals in nature and I'm like, they deserve to advance and reach the consciousness human beings have attained. I look at, for example, children, and I look at great, men in history, like old people who achieved greatness, and I'm like, they all deserve greatness, right? So when you conclude that the world deserves greatness, there is no ego warfare anymore. Life functions as the winds of evolution, righteous in their own accord. Rig Veda says even God blesses only those who are contemplative, intelligent, and the protectors of the weak. In the Rig Veda, it says truth is one. Sages call it by various names. Yeah, this is why enlightenment leads to laughter. You realize the simulation of truth, wanting to find truth, it has such a simple resolve that you will laugh. Papaji, if you Google Papaji videos on YouTube, P-A-P-J-I, and you listen to this man's expressions, you will see that this person has understood that there is a state where nothing is being everything, and that cannot be individualized. Hence, intelligence is universal. When you attain universal consciousness, when you're not just a person happening throughout the day, you're a universe that is happening throughout the day, then you transcend all archetypes and attachments, whether it was to the image of land, whether it was to the image of whatever, right? It's as if the true nature of the human being retaliates to the void through its ultimate expression. That is the last stance of, that is the true fight of humanity. Or as Dylan Thomas, this incredible warrior, poet, he has this thing where he says, God, if I can remember it, he says, do not go gentle into that good night. Rage against the dying of the light. Right? So what the dying of the light is the dying of the human effort outside of all social circles and mind atmospheres. I am telling you, we are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a species in the middle of nowhere. We are a Compassion has to be maxed out. Efficiency has to be maxed out. Mindfulness has to be maxed out. And in every moment in the outer realms, every person should attempt their most advanced performance. That is it. That's my approach, which I feel it has served, in the sense that whatever I do, I'm like, all right, I get to do this once, then I move from this moment, and I'm never in this moment again. So every moment you attempt the as far as your mind can reach. In the Vedas, it says, ego is the biggest enemy of humans. Oh, that's hilarious. Ego is the human. You know, the idea of us, which is what ought to be, and us, which is what is. If they are in disharmony, there is internal warfare. Internal warfare means you are at war with your past, which is causing depression, or you're at war with your future, which is causing anxiety. And these two, their only retaliation is how the present moment moves forward. What I'm saying, what I just said right now is super important. I hope everybody understands. It's as if a human being found an audience with the divine truth, with God, and the person's like, yo, God, what's up with all this existence? Like, why are we here? You know, and then imagine for the Logos spoke to that person, and the Logos said, you know, I've been asking the same question. That we have to be able to not only live with what is knowable in greater dimensions, we have to also be able to abide by our true nature, so we can honor and respect what is unknowable in nature as well. You know, to have a relationship with the unknowable is the greatest divinity. Because language and knowledge, it is so unupdated. I'm telling you, any person who's trying to reach the peak of any educational system, they will quickly realize how much the human species doesn't know, and the world needs explorers. You know, that means I have no idea what they're teaching. Like, teachers shouldn't be talking in the educational system. Teachers should just be asking questions, and the students should be communicating. Right? Because there is one way where the teacher waits for the students to ask a question, then there's a way where the teacher asks a question from the student. When the teacher asks a question from the student is like, oh my God, I gotta look at my own world right now and give a response, you know? And so it suggests the cultivation of their inner realms. That means an advanced counselor of an educational system would look at the student and be like, where is the student to themselves before they are in the classroom? And if the outer realms are harsh, the student cannot be a good student, and the educational system has to have the compassion to understand that different eyes and DNA and cultural, there's so many different types of people on this planet that it doesn't make sense to create one educational system, one doorway, one small doorway for people of different sizes and visions to enter, right? So the educational system and all schools have to be a global recruitment of the greatest ideas on the planet. What it means is we have to build schools like the School of Athens. I call it the School of Athens 2.0, an effort for a network of advanced communication to emerge. Not limited by, oh my God, is that person a philosopher? Is that person religious? Is that person, you know, secular? Is that person this? Is that person that? The list can go on forever. We can judge something to infinity. You know, we can follow, if love is ideology based and it's not from the true presence of the person, then a person can endlessly reason why they love something or reason why they don't love something. Language is honestly like a gladiator arena where language can simulate any image. So without honesty, we don't get to see what is really here. And honesty means you have found contentment with a state of being that is uniform in all moments. That means an honest person can be found in any moment, and they will just respond to it in accordance to what the stimulus has, what the stimulus evokes in the mind of the person. And the gods find this adorable. When you dive into ancient mythological imagery, the gods defended the innocent. Like that was something the gods had a reason to animate in the realm, right? When evil happens, what do we find? Superheroes punching bad guys in the face. Why? Why do we find that? Why is man, like how many people on this planet? I mean, of course, this is a comic series evoked out of the mind of an individual. But I'm saying, just the idea that we step up to the challenge of colossal problems by actually tapping into a colossal archetype, right? Communication is very similar to piloting in the sense that in the application of intelligence is a solo act. Sometimes for me it is easy to observe past emotions, not to get emotional about the imagery I speak about, because in some sense there is so much more. When you realize there is so much more, we have to have a new paradigm. I was looking at relationship theory, and I was looking online, listening to some lectures of how modern human beings perceive the evolution of the relationship of the human animal with itself, with others, and with the world. And I came to this conclusion that right now people are trying to be attracted by the outer phenomenology of the realm, but if they realize there is an inner presence of imagery everywhere, that means when a person speaks, there's a world happening behind their eyes, right? Every person. That's why you can fall in love with any mind. Why? Because the mind is an ocean it's like an infinite ocean. Excuse me. Pretty much the strategy of 8 billion objects that have become subjects to themselves is to try to find the ultimate subject. In the attempt to find the ultimate subject, not only humility, honor, and sincerity is cultivated, but we will have a very high quality human interference with nature. Right now we have a low quality human interaction with nature. We're pretty much destroying it and building our own thing. But if we wanted to have a high quality in nature, we would build cities like Venice if we were smart. If the human species was smart, we would not destroy any forest. We would just build, cities. And all the companies that had destroyed forests have to plant the same amount of trees they have destroyed. Imagine this happens by law, where it's called the mere judgment. Excuse me. Personal intermission. There's many ways to observe reality, of course, because there's so many different types of human beings that in accordance to their inner realms, they extract meaning from a meaningless outer realm, an elemental outer realm. But when we really look closely at the human intelligence, I don't know how many people understand the intimate relationship our brains have with oxygen. For me, in the evolution of my view on communication, I have realized breathing has a huge part. Breathing is like oxygen brushing your brain in every moment, right? So we have to recognize, stay true to the design of the biology, then at the same time wonder about its signals. Wonder about what in some sense is being received. When I inhale and exhale, that's literally like any idea I had before was something written on the seashore or on the beach, and then the waves of the water came, and every time I breathe, it's like a reset, right? So we are actually our every heartbeat is like a reset. Every time we blink, the sensory landscape is in like it's actually reset. But because we don't zoom in on the blink, we feel the world is just there. We blinked, right? But really, if the world was a simulation of the mind, every time we blink, that is literally an apocalypse. So based on how many times a person has blinked in this life, it's a suggestion of how many apocalypses we have gone through as a mental being, So the mind is not afraid of death in the sense that all human beings wake up in the day, live, and then go to sleep, and then wake up again. So the mind actually enters and exits reality all the time, right? It's just that the body stays existentially intact until 100 years. So what that means is really is that the body is a canvas where mental paintings endlessly are drawn and washed off with every breath. Because honestly, right now, when I wonder about how many lives have I lived? I notice, I was born in 1991, and my mind, my brain, this biological body, as it has been continuing in the space-time continuum, I have in some sense lived as so many different types of self, just like all of us. Based on our self, its content comes from the environment, and it comes from our inner environment. Right? Our inner environment is our memory, and how there is something watching the memory behind the eyes of the person. That is the real you, to be honest. Not only the real you, but that is a closer effort towards the real you. So the body is living one life. The mind is living multiple lives. And then there is death. Then there is a complete nullification. Do you know what that means? That means the multidimensional and the singular are destined for the same moment. That means we are all going to the same non-place, which is beyond this physical line. In the chat section, Yusuf says, mind field filled with mind trap. You are as trapped as you cannot find a way to progress. So a person can be temporarily trapped, a person can be completely trapped, a a person can be instantaneously trapped and instantaneously released. You know, the mind has various ways, but then this has to come towards the street smarts of the soul. If your soul is street smart, you don't let language define you, so you don't get trapped. You know, not that you don't let language define you. Even if you identify with language, you know that what is actually going on is way beyond language. We question the world. In our questioning of the world, we discover we are the life force that needs to access the answer. That means the only definition of truth can be an instantaneous one. Truth cannot be found, it cannot be grabbed, it cannot be held. Truth is. And I would say that is the inquiry of wondering if reality is a simulation, because the concept of a simulation means it means that what is inside the simulation is false, but what is causing the simulation cannot be a simulation. So truth is dreaming. We are truth stream right now, inside truth stream, and what truth is so beyond the individual. So reality, the concept of a simulation, will become outdated. Do you believe it? But I don't know in how long. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys. I hope this episode was useful. What my vision for the human species is that every human being on this earth realizes nobody else has their DNA and they are a unique antenna. When it comes to physical judgment and comparison, we are all have different capabilities. But when it comes to non-physical, you know, judgment and comparison, we are all like unique geometry that has entered the world for a little while. What you do with the geometry of your eyes is your destiny. And so reality, there's definitely in the future I'm going to try to have these public workshops where I try to help people pilot their inner realms geometrically. Geometrically means that there is no emotion, so you actually get to experience your mind in the design, on that design level. When you experience your mind on a design level, because there is no emotion, just like it's like telling someone how does the color blue make you feel, or the color green make you feel. It's like they don't make us feel anything, they just are what they are, and we just see what is, right? So when it comes to seeing really what your intelligence is on this planet, there is a geometrical dimension to it. And in that geometrical dimension, we can pilot, and many artists on this planet have breached into that dimension. That means that dimension is not new. We have had human beings on this planet, advanced communicators, and those who have piloted in their inner realms towards the unknown, you know, not just in the outer realms. In the outer realms, you know, you need a very, you know, giant wallet in order to build a spaceship. But in your inner realms, you can fathom the invention of various kinds of, let's say, flight craft. Whether they have to do with engaging reality on an elemental level or on a very different advanced level, where it's as if like right now my mind is moving my body as I'm speaking to you, but moments where the body moves the mind can only be a passenger, and the more the mind is a passenger, the less there is an ego. The less there is an ego, the less there is a shape. So whatever world we're in, we advance communicate our attention. We discover the inseparability of and the interdependence of what the universe is doing and with what we are doing. And you begin to compare yourself to universal intelligence rather than any identity. I would like to read for the audience a poem. So this poem I wrote in 2015 from the work called My Solaris. It's called The Unending Ceiling. And it's poem 19. And it says, some birds rather cross the sidewalk like a human being. How have we evolved beyond an animal? What makes the free boundless and in need of divine intervention? All men subconsciously want what they don't know they can have. We spend many hours contemplating how nothing is within everything. The world is purely made of free imagination when reality is given freely in the moment's peak. Who climbed the mountain of thought to see a monkey jump to its next monkey business? When Darwin told his mother we all came from apes, was Darwining a proper answer? Let the tiger go beyond the cage of passing assumption. When you realize you cannot be touched, what is freely here shall always be loved. Existence is to know beyond facts and shapes. You are the whole. Guys, it's starting to rain, so I'm just gonna share one more poem and end it off. This other poem is called When the Cat Killed Curiosity. One night, the sun came up a little too late. Many caged animals got frightened whether the cages they're in is made of metallic ignorance or heavy thoughts. Who judges us when we can no longer judge ourselves? Do not bend your will to who you are not. People act nice, but we all want something from life. The cycle does not end when the spirals of manifest existence spiral both in and out. We all can be free when the world becomes more than washed up sand. When the cat killed curiosity, fear could no longer stand. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste.